The first thing the waitress noticed about the stranger was not his expensive suit. It was the ring. It was almost 3 in the morning when the bell above the door of the little roadside cafe chimed, announcing the arrival of a man who looked as though he had stepped out of another world. The cafe was nearly empty. A tired truck driver slept near the window. An old radio played softly behind the counter, and rain tapped against the glass. The stranger walked in without saying a word. He removed his dark coat, placed it neatly beside him, and sat in the booth furthest from everyone else. He looked exhausted, not ordinary tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too many secrets for too many years. His name was Matteo Castalli. To ordinary people, he was a wealthy Italian businessman with interests in shipping, real estate, and luxury hotels. But in certain circles, his name carried an entirely different meaning. Matteo was the head of the Castalli cartel, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country. He was feared because he rarely raised his voice. He didn't need to. People listened when Matteo spoke because they understood that his calmness was far more dangerous than anger. That night, however, Matteo wasn't interested in business. He wasn't looking for trouble. He simply wanted coffee. The waitress approached his table carrying a pot. Her name was Sofia Moretti. She was 25 years old and worked nights because the pay was slightly better and because life had never given her the luxury of choosing easy hours. Her clothes were simple. Her shoes were worn. Her hair was tied loosely behind her head. She looked tired, but there was something warm about her that Matteo hadn't seen in a very long time. She placed the coffee in front of him. "Long night?" Matteo looked up. "Very." She smiled faintly. "You're not the only one." She began pouring coffee into his cup. Then her eyes dropped to his hand. She stopped. Matteo noticed. "What?" She pointed at the ring on his finger. "That ring." Matteo's expression changed instantly. It was subtle. So subtle that another person might not have noticed. But Sofia did. "My mother has one just like it." The coffee continued pouring. Matteo didn't move. He didn't blink. For several seconds, the entire cafe seemed to disappear. "What did you say?" Sofia finally looked at him. "My mother has a ring like yours." Matteo slowly looked down at the gold ring on his finger. It wasn't expensive because of its value. It was valuable because of what it represented. The ring carried the ancient Castalli family crest, a broken crown surrounded by 2 interlocking circles. Only 3 had ever been made. One belonged to Matteo. One had been buried with his father. The third had disappeared 20 years earlier with a man named Lorenzo Vieri. Lorenzo had been Matteo's father's most trusted advisor. He had also been accused of betraying the Castalli family. Years ago, Lorenzo had vanished after Matteo's older brother died under mysterious circumstances. Matteo had spent years trying to discover what really happened. Every trail eventually disappeared. Every witness became silent. Every answer led nowhere. until tonight. And now a tired waitress had just told him that her mother possessed the missing ring. Matteo leaned forward. "What's your name?" Sophia frowned. "Sophia. Your last name?" "Moretti. Where did your mother get the ring?" Her expression hardened. "I don't know." "You've never asked?" "I have. And my mother doesn't like talking about the past." Matteo studied her. She wasn't lying. That made the situation even more interesting. He placed a large tip on the table and stood. Sophia watched him leave through the rain-covered glass. She had no idea that the man she had just served coffee to was about to change her life forever. Across the street, Matteo climbed into a black luxury SUV. His closest advisor, Marco, was waiting behind the wheel. "Who is she?" Marco asked. "Sophia Moretti." Marco glanced at him. "And?" "Her mother has one of our family rings." Marco's expression changed. "You mean the missing one?" Matteo nodded. For years, Matteo had believed the ring disappeared with Lorenzo Vieri. Now it had resurfaced. And it had appeared on the finger of a woman who knew nothing about the world Matteo belonged to. "Find out everything about Sophia," Matteo said. Marco hesitated. "Everything?" "Her mother, their history, where they came from, but don't frighten them." Marco understood. Matteo had never been known for mercy, but he had rules, and innocent people were not to be harmed simply because they were connected to his enemies. Meanwhile, Sophia returned home before sunrise. Her apartment was small, warm, and painfully modest. She quietly opened the door. "Mum?" There was no answer. She found her mother sitting beside the window, wrapped in a blanket. Her name was Elena. She had raised Sophia alone for as long as Sophia could remember. Elena had always been protective, sometimes too protective. They had moved several times when Sophia was younger. They never stayed in one place for long. They never talked about Sophia's father, and Elena had always refused to explain where their money came from during the difficult years. Sophia walked over and kissed her forehead. "You should be sleeping." Elena looked at her. "You're late. I had a strange customer." Her mother's expression changed. "What kind of customer?" "A man." Elena became visibly tense. "What was his name?" Sophia frowned. "I don't know why you're asking." "Did he give you his name?" "Matteo." The color drained from Elena's face. Sophia immediately noticed. "Mom?" Elena stood. "Did he say his last name?" "Castali." The room went completely silent. Elena stared at her daughter as if she had just heard a name from a nightmare. "Where did you meet him?" "At the cafe." "Did he see the ring?" Sophia looked toward the small wooden cabinet. Inside it was an old metal box. She knew exactly what her mother kept inside. "The ring. How do you know about that?" Elena sat down slowly. For the first time in Sophia's life, her mother looked genuinely frightened. "Because I hoped you would never need to know." Sophia opened the box. Inside was the old gold ring. She picked it up. "Who gave you this?" Elena looked at it for a long moment. Someone who was supposed to come back. Who? Elena didn't answer. Mum. Her mother closed her eyes. His name was Lorenzo. Sophia froze. Who was Lorenzo? But before Elena could answer, there was a knock at the apartment door. Both women turned toward it. The knock came again. 3 slow taps. Elena's face became pale. "Don't open it," Sophia whispered. "Who is it?" "I don't know." The knocking stopped. Then came silence. Sophia slowly approached the door. She looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. She opened it carefully. The hallway was empty. But there was an envelope on the floor. No name. No address. Inside was a photograph. It showed Elena 20 years earlier, standing beside a man Sophia had never seen, Lorenzo. On the back of the photograph were 5 words. He was never the traitor. Sophia's hands began to tremble. Before she could understand what it meant, her phone rang. It was the cafe owner. He told her not to come to work that night. Someone had been asking questions about her. Sophia immediately understood that the stranger from the night before was not simply a wealthy businessman. Something much bigger was happening. And Matteo knew it too. By the following evening, Matteo had learned the truth. Sophia had no criminal history, no connections to organized crime. She worked 2 jobs. She was struggling financially. And her mother had lived under a false identity for nearly 20 years. But there was one detail that bothered Matteo. Elena Moretti had not simply disappeared. Someone had deliberately erased her. Someone powerful. Someone inside the system. Someone who had wanted Matteo to believe Lorenzo Vieri was dead. Matteo sat alone in his office that night, staring at an old photograph of his family. His father, his older brother, and himself. For 20 years, Matteo had believed the official story. Lorenzo betrayed the Castali family. Lorenzo caused his brother's death. Lorenzo disappeared. But what if all of it had been a lie? The next evening, Matteo returned to the cafe. Sophia was there. She saw him immediately. "You again?" Matteo smiled faintly. "You're difficult to forget." She folded her arms. "Are you following me?" "No." "Then why are you here?" "Because I owe you an explanation." Sophia laughed bitterly. "You know my name, where I live, where I work, and you somehow know things about my mother. I think you're well past owing me an explanation." Matteo looked at her. "You are right." For once, Sophia saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not arrogance, not intimidation, regret. "I am Matteo Castali. I know. My family has enemies. So does mine, apparently." Matteo almost smiled. Then the cafe door opened. 2 unfamiliar men entered. Sophia immediately noticed Matteo's posture change. He became alert. The men looked around. Then one of them looked directly at Sophia. Matteo quietly stepped between them. "Sophia, go into the kitchen." She didn't move. What is happening? Please. The softness in his voice made her obey. She disappeared behind the counter. The men approached Matteo. We need to talk. You can talk from there. One man reached into his jacket. Matteo's expression hardened. Before the situation could escalate, the cafe owner switched off the lights and triggered the emergency alarm. The sudden noise startled everyone. Matteo seized the opportunity. He guided Sofia through the back door and into the rain. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. I don't trust you. You shouldn't. She stopped walking. Matteo turned. But you can trust one thing, he said. I won't let anyone hurt you. She stared at him. Why? Matteo had no easy answer. Because she was connected to his past. Because her mother knew secrets that could destroy his family. Because Sofia was innocent. And because something about her had already begun breaking through the walls he had spent years building around himself. Because you don't deserve to pay for someone else's mistakes. Sofia finally followed him. Matteo took her to a private country estate. It wasn't a prison. It wasn't luxurious in an extravagant way. It was simply secure. There, Elena was reunited with her daughter, and Matteo finally sat down with Elena. He placed the Castali ring on the table. Tell me the truth. Elena looked at it. You really don't remember? Remember what? Your brother. Matteo went still. Elena continued. Lorenzo didn't betray your family. Then who did? Elena looked toward Sofia. Someone who wanted you to become exactly what you are today. Matteo's jaw tightened. Who? Your uncle. The words struck harder than any weapon could have. Matteo's uncle had raised him after his brother's death. He had taught Matteo everything. Business, power, loyalty, survival. He had become Matteo's closest advisor. And if Elena was telling the truth, everything Matteo had built had been based on a lie. Sofia watched him carefully. What does my mother know? Enough to get herself killed, Matteo replied. Elena reached into the old metal box and removed a folded piece of paper. Lorenzo left this for you. Matteo opened it. There were names, bank accounts, payments, dates, and one final message. Matteo was never supposed to inherit. He was supposed to be controlled. Matteo stared at the page. Suddenly, 20 years of his life made sense. His uncle hadn't saved him. He had manipulated him. He had turned grief into anger, anger into ambition, and ambition into a weapon. The man Matteo had trusted most had secretly engineered the destruction of his own family. But there was something else. At the bottom of the document was proof that Lorenzo had survived. He hadn't disappeared. He had been hiding, and he was still alive. Matteo immediately wanted to leave, but Sofia stopped him. You're going after him? Yes. You're going to destroy everyone involved. Matteo looked at her. I don't know what else to do. Sofia stepped closer. Maybe for once, you don't have to destroy everything. He stared at her. She reached for his hand. His fingers were cold. You spent 20 years becoming someone everyone would fear, she whispered. Maybe now you should become someone you don't have to fear. Matteo said nothing. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not because they weren't brave. Because they were afraid. Sofia wasn't. She saw the darkness in him, but she also saw the man underneath it. And Matteo realized something that frightened him more than any enemy ever had. He cared about her. Not because she was connected to his past, not because her mother possessed a missing piece of his family's history. He cared because when he was with Sofia, he didn't feel like the head of the Castelli cartel. He simply felt like Matteo. For the first time in years, he wanted something that couldn't be bought. A future. But before that future could exist, Matteo had one final truth to uncover. He returned to the city and confronted his uncle. There was no grand battle, no unnecessary bloodshed, just two men sitting across from each other in a quiet office. Matteo placed the documents on the table. His uncle looked at them. Then he sighed. You finally found the truth. Why? Because your brother wanted to leave the family business. Matteo's eyes hardened. He wanted peace. He wanted weakness. His uncle replied. No, Matteo said quietly. He wanted a life. For the first time, Matteo understood. His brother had not been betrayed because he was weak. He had been betrayed because someone feared he would choose a different future. And Matteo had spent 20 years becoming the very thing his brother had tried to escape. Matteo stood. My father built this family on loyalty. His uncle laughed. Your father built it on power. Then I will be the one to change it. Matteo walked away. He did not kill his uncle. He didn't need to. He turned over the evidence to authorities and dismantled the parts of the cartel connected to corruption. It was the most dangerous decision of his life. Some people left. Some betrayed him. Others remained loyal. But for the first time, Matteo was building something because he believed in it, not because someone had taught him to fear losing it. Months passed. Sofia's mother received proper medical care. Their debts were settled. They moved into a quiet home where Sofia could finally sleep without wondering who might knock on the door. And Matteo? He changed too. He reduced his criminal operations and turned much of his legitimate business toward shipping and property development. People still feared his name, but Sofia knew the man behind it. One evening, months after their first meeting, Matteo returned to the same little cafe where everything had started. Sofia was working behind the counter. She saw him and smiled. You still drink your coffee black? Only when you're serving it. She laughed. Matteo sat at the same booth. But this time, he didn't choose the seat facing the door. Sofia brought him his coffee. She looked at his hand. The old Castelli ring was gone. What happened to it? I put it away. Why? Matteo looked at her. Because I don't want my future defined by my family's past. Sofia smiled. Then she noticed something else. A small velvet box on the table. She stared at it. Matteo. He opened it. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing extravagant. Nothing connected to the cartel. Just a beautiful gold band. I spent most of my life believing love was a weakness, Matteo said. Then you walked into my life and made me realize it might be the only thing strong enough to save me. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. You really know how to make a woman nervous. Matteo smiled. Is that a yes? She looked at the ring, then at him. Ask me properly. Matteo stood. For a man who had commanded powerful people without hesitation, he suddenly looked almost nervous. Sophia Moretti, will you marry me? She smiled. Yes. Outside, the rain began falling softly against the windows. The same kind of rain that had fallen the night they met. But everything was different now. The dangerous Mafia boss who once lived behind locked doors had finally discovered that love did not make him weak. It gave him a reason to stop running. Sophia had entered his life carrying nothing but an old family secret. She left him with something far more valuable, a reason to believe he could become more than the darkness that had raised him. And Matteo Castali finally understood that sometimes the person who changes your life doesn't arrive when everything is perfect. Sometimes they arrive in the middle of the storm. Sometimes they are the person you were never supposed to meet. And sometimes the greatest love story begins with something as simple as a cup of coffee and a ring that was never supposed to be found. If you enjoyed Matteo and Sophia's story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more emotional mafia romance stories filled with secrets, danger, unexpected love, and unforgettable twists.